Hey guys, I haven't done a video in a while, so I thought, here we go. This is a little bit about making dovetails by hand or cutting dovetails by hand, and a little bit of an epiphany that I had recently, which has made my life a lot simpler and a lot easier, and made my dovetails a lot easier and a lot better. Really, it all boiled down to connecting just a few dots. Where I was really struggling. In the end, it doesn't really matter if you are cutting your pins first or the tails first, that's entirely up to you. I think it actually matters what you cut second. So let me explain this a little bit more. In reality, in my case, I like to start with the tails rather than the pins. For a very simple reason. Now, when I mark out my tails, there's a number of things that I'm interested in considering. So, firstly, all of my cuts have to be square and straight. When I say square, I'm saying my saw has to be square to the workpiece. Now, I'm left-handed, so I'm just going to swap this around. So, basically, I need to be square, right? To make sure that so realistically, all I need to be able to do is cut straight in this direction. To achieve that, all I do is basically put my tails at an angle and just cut straight. The thing that's been frustrating me for quite a lot is trying to get the saw started. There's quite a lot of videos out there. The best one that I've found, or the best tip I found, is if you look at your saw and you're going white-knuckled, you're going holding it too strong. So realistically, a saw should be between your middle finger and the bottom of your hand down here, and you should just be able to balance it. The other thing is, if you start a saw cut back at the end, you have all this weight of the saw on the tooth. Whereby if you do it here, you only have very little weight on here and it's a lot easier. Depending on the wood I found, it's either easier to start this way or this way. And it really depends on the wood now, and what your proficiency is or your preference is. So check it out with a bit of scrap wood and go from there. So mark out your tails. When I mark out my tails, mark out your pins, whatever you want. Get them all cut, all right? Line them up, get them cut, get them cleaned up with whatever method you want to. It really doesn't matter. The bit that is interesting is here, and this might be during the layout. Make sure you can actually get one of your chisels into the gap, all right? So, actually, this one might be a better way of seeing it. All right, make sure you can get the chisels into the gap, otherwise you're going to have problems cleaning out your waste. Once this is done, you then have to do the second part. In my case, the pins. And I'm doing pins second now because I found that it's a lot easier for me to transfer my lines. I know my tails are square, as in the walls of the tails are fairly square to this surface here. And it doesn't really matter if they're a little bit wider, the angles are a little bit different. None of this matters. It's really the fact that I can transfer this and put them together, all right? So whatever I have here, I need to be able to transfer onto here and cut accurately, all right? So for me, that means it is a lot easier, especially as a beginner, to slightly tilt my saw blade. So in this case, rather than coming straight on, I have to tilt to an angle and cut straight down. And I can achieve that by simply moving my body position. So I can clamp it all in and then start sawing straight down. I also stay well away from my lines, so I have actually got material to trim and square everything up. So if you believe that you can actually mark your pins out first, get them done, and then get nice straight cuts on here, that's fine. In my case, I found it easier to do my tails first, get them square, transfer my markings, and then bring them over. Now, in my case here, let's have a look. This should fit. And all it needed was a little bit of cleaning up. And it came out better than I actually had expected. Now, I practiced a fair bit on apple tree or apple wood, which is quite easy to cut. Now, this is cherry. And I had to practice again. I just had to get straight cuts going in a piece of scrap to make sure I know how my saw behaves. But realistically, if you think you can do your pins and then transfer them over, all right, in whatever method, and then cut to the line and get it cleaned up properly, do that. Just choose whichever one is easier, because the closer you get to line over time, the easier it will be to fit the dovetails together. Cleaning out the waste, use whatever method you want. There's plenty of videos around. The only thing that I have to say as well that I found, especially because this is a small piece at all, let's make sure that the bottom, that my chisel actually fits through the gap, the narrow gap on the pins. Otherwise, you're just going to be ending up in trouble. All right, make sure when you do the layout here, realistically, let's get this together. Let's make sure that holds. Yes, this should be bigger so that you can actually, whatever chisel you're choosing, you can actually still get your chisel into that gap. All right, that's really all. Key things that I really learned is start cutting your saw cut at the start so you don't have to wait of the entire saw sitting on the wood, but only these little bits. Depending, again, practice on a piece of, or try it out on a piece of wood. It doesn't matter if you go this way, leaning down, or this way. Just work out whatever works better for you. And finally, whichever one is harder to cut, pins or tails, do that one first, so that becomes the marking out that you need to work against. And the other one is the one that you're fitting to it, and it becomes a lot easier. There's some really good videos out there, as per usual. Michael Peckowicz's Blue Tape, Fine Woodworking has lots of stuff. You name them. But I found this makes the biggest difference to my cleanliness and making sure once the marking is set out, it's all good. And we'll just keep going from there. Practice your straight cuts. Make sure that you can cut nice and plumb, and if you need to, move the wood. Thank you very much.